fantastical. Literally, I don't know what to say anymore. I love being in the same room with you. What can I say?
We're making a habit of this.
We're making a habit of this. It's quite a good habit as well. No pick up from my house this time, but that's fine. How did you get here today?
Train. And this is the perfect spot for the train station. It's literally next door.
Well, that is good to hear. I left my timings a bit tight this morning, so I got an Uber into town, but it was all good. We made it, and we're here.
Is this because you're now very comfortable with the data mix and the setup?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with for sure. Yeah. But it's good to be here in a new venue as well. What do you think of this one? Well, sorry for a bit echoey, folks. We're sort of getting used to all the acoustics.
It's kind of bright. There's trains over there, building site over there, very central.
It's right beside the train station, which is extremely helpful as well.
But plenty space, which is a good thing, bigger than the last place, which kind of leads to there's room for more people here, Brian.
There is room for more people here, and it's funny you mention that because I think we've been pushing something over the last few weeks. I can't really think what it is, but we do believe that we might have a third person in the room somewhere here. So oh my goodness, it's unbelievable.
Hello.
Who are you, sorry?
Oh, I'm just random off the street.
That's good. That's good. It's fantastical to bring into the Data Mix episode 9. It's Susan Walsh, the classification guru. Isn't this absolutely tremendous? Yes. Sorry, I hope this isn't crossing a boundary. There you go.
Inappropriate. Reports on LinkedIn.
Get it there. So I think we are now up and running on LinkedIn. George has secretly got the laptop. So we've got the laptop down here, and we've got the camera over here, and we've got the microphone here. And again,
I'm also live on my channel as well.
Oh yeah. I think hey everyone on StreamYard for Susan as well. Sorry, Susan, you appear to be blocked out a little bit by the microphone.
That's fine.
You'll be
They don't want to see me. See enough of me.
The only way we can get it better is to have a live audience.
I know we are still working on that. If anyone knows how to get us in front of a live audience and wants to sort all that out and finance that as well, that'd be great. For anyone that's watching, I'll just appeal directly to the camera. Please, we really want to.
Can I just say, have it in a better location? This is like the arse of Edinburgh down here.
Well, that is.
That's
why we don't have live guests, mate, honestly. I'm not sure we're allowed to say that on LinkedIn Live. I'm going to say it again anyway.
But it's like Edinburgh is basically on different levels if you don't know it, and so this is like Google tells you to go over this bridge, but actually where you need to be is down below, and then you can't actually get to down below. So it's fun.
It's a data impossibility.
And there's some really interesting pubs and things we can explore here.
Might be able to do that after the show. Maybe just as a guest.
Make things close. That's the underground street. That's really cool.
We need to find somewhere to go for dinner because we're pretty unorganised and we haven't really arranged it all yet.
I just had lunch, so
you've just had lunch, so what else have you been up to over the last couple of days, Susan? It's been a globe-trotting week, I think, I've put out on that.
I know. So yesterday morning, I was in London. I was at the Data Management Summit hosting a panel on data democratization, which, gotta be honest, is not in my wheelhouse until yesterday, so I know a lot more about it now, but obviously data quality is at the heart of this, so got to get on stage and I had a handheld mic, so I was joking with the audience because there were some people that I knew there. I promised not to sing on stage, and we had some laughs, we had some audience participation, and just great to be in a room with loads of data professionals who are all passionate about the same thing,
We had a similar experience last week, didn't we? We went to a thing together and it was really cool just to see people. It went really well. It's, I got to talk to people, that's all I care about, because I can yammer for days and days and days. So I think we're all in the same room in that regard. We're all on the same boat. So
we might be here a while.
We might be here a while. And much of travelling, basically. What was it like being on a panel? That seems important.
Well, I had to manage the questions, manage the timings, keep everybody entertained. It was my first one. I wouldn't say it was great, but I thought it was good, and I got some really great feedback actually. So it doesn't really matter what I think, as long as the audience enjoyed it.
Well, look, speaking about like the audience enjoying things, I think what I'll do, I'll just pop off the chat overlay just to say hello to a few people just now. Oh, that's not going to work like that. All right, so what we'll do then is we'll just get Scott, because Scott is always like there and ready to like let us know what's going on. Yes, let's go, Susan, and polka dots. Absolutely, we were blown away. My goodness, there's actually gone with the polka dots on the comment thing there as well, which is outstanding. Well done, Scott. Good to have you here. We'd love to hear from you folks. If you're sitting watching on LinkedIn Live today or on YouTube, you can pop something in the chat, ask you some questions.
Ask me anything.
Ask you literally anything.
Yeah.
Believe me, we've had these questions before the show, and we could literally ask her anything.
Yeah.
So,
who do you get advice?
Dorothy Pease, Dorothy Perkins, absolute legend, yeah.
Some questions like that.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Anyway.
I should get sponsored by clothes designers, like say I'm wearing, you know.
but that is another avenue that you can work with.
Actually, I just got to bring out the shoes.
Oh my word! Bring out shoes.
The shoes are here.
Well, you know what? If this is the way we're doing things, right? I've got some massive trainers on. So you can actually see I've got some. I can actually do that. I do have polka dots.
Polka dotty. And I've got my boring canvas. Very comfortable, very sensible.
You know what they do that really come to like they open on bubbles.
Pretty much. I guess they could try polka dots.
So the last bit of ambient chat I have before we really get into things is that I was well prepared, and you know, we couldn't have a meeting with 3 Scots in the room without me bringing along a bottle of this. So I did actually bring my bottle of Iron Brew. It is the juice of the gods. What's your thoughts on Iron Brew at 10? I mean, anything less than 10 is awesome. Someone I once gave a taste to someone who was American, and they said it tasted like bubble gum, and my face recoiled at when it was like.
Have you seen their latest ad campaign? It's like asking people what it tastes of. Like everyone's got a different opinion.
I've not.
But also,
I think it said bubble gum.
for anyone outside the UK watching, Scotland is one of the only countries in the world where Coca-Cola is outsold by another soft drink. It's that good.
That is legit true. That is a fact. That is a fact. Not just because Susan said it and she's the classification guru, it is an actual fact.
You go to McDonald's, you get fans always have this Iron Brew.
No, I missed that when I go down England. I can't get mine.
I know.
I have asked. I do try. I know.
I know. Like, what?
And you know, at the risk of tenuously bringing things back on track, because we could, I think we might even other Scottish things later on, but let's come back to that. But Susan, just for the viewers, I can't believe anyone's on this show that doesn't know who you are or what you do. Why don't you give us a wee just brief overview about what you do and how you got there?
Probably.
I'll drink some Iron Brew in the background.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know if Dalton's watching, but I just feel like I should say hi because you introduced me to Dalton, and he's the green bow-tied hunk of a man. And one day we will meet Dalton, one day we will meet.
Almost that Iron Brew.
So yeah, if you don't know me, I am Susan Walsh, the classification guru, fixer of dirty data. I started out in the procurement space, classifying spend data, showing companies what they're spending their money on so they can make cost savings. But now I also clean databases, CRM systems, ERP systems, P2P systems, every acronym you can think of, I can clean it. And work globally with the most amazing companies, but because nobody wants to admit they have dirty data, I can not really tell you any of them. You just have to take my word for it. But I've got a team now, there's 5 of us, and we really love what we're doing.
And George and I were having a chat yesterday about how you do the job that we secretly hate to do. Like that thing, so it's just that, this is a great leaping off point, right? So that thing, let's just take USA as an example, right? U.S.E. and USA and U space S.A. and US in the United States, and we could literally spend the hour counting different versions of that. But that's very typical of the type of thing that you go in and wade into and just click your magical fingers.
Yeah, and states as well. So you get states, you get the abbreviations of the abbreviations, you get it all. So standardize all that stuff. Same with company names, you know, Dell, Dell Inc., Dell Limited, Dell Computers, Dell Software, it all becomes Dell, IBM, IBM, IBM Inc., IBM Limited, all of it. But there's a real, I mean, you have to have a certain mindset to do this, but there is a real sense of satisfaction when you have that clean data set at the end. And to be honest, most regular Joes on the street wouldn't probably notice the difference unless we show them a side-by-side comparison and they're like, this is what we did for you.
Yeah, it is very true. That sort of mapping, and you won't use the word again, classification, because it is the best word, is that piece that, as you say, you have to have a certain, quite a methodical mindset to be able to. How have sort of things evolved over the last sort of, I mean, you've been doing this a long time, so how have things evolved from like sitting there with an Excel spreadsheet and taking each copy of USA and mapping it? So how has that all changed over the last few years then?
Well, the business is coming up for its 5-year anniversary, which is huge. I just posted yesterday, it's 10 years since my first business closed. So to get to 5 years after the first one failing before it even hit a year is a huge milestone for me. I worked at a spend analytics company before I did this, so they were using a tool called Omniscope, which is a data modeling and visualization tool. So think of Alteryx and Tableau work like in one tool, and that's what it does. And a lot more, I just don't use the other stuff. And while I was working there, I developed my own kind of methodology. You know, we just found it. I'm always about process improvement. How can I do this faster, quicker, more efficiently, but still be accurate?
That doesn't come across at all.
No. And I just found ways to do this. And when it was time to leave, and I didn't know where I could get a job doing the same thing, I set up my own business and continued on with the Omniscope route. But I've been very fortunate to take on a Kickstarter at the beginning of the year, which is funded through the government. So he's with me for 6 months, but he will be staying on. He's getting offered a permanent full-time job because he has managed to automate a lot of processes that we've been doing manually. Because I didn't have the skills myself to be able to automate it, so we just did it manually. So sometimes we're shooting days off the projects now. Prices are not going down, by the way.
Just to be clear, prices are not going down. Not going down.
Inflation is still going up,
Yeah.
but quality is going up, and it just means we get extra time to be thorough in our checks and make sure everything's right. And we don't blanket automate everything. We automate the things we can be very sure about. One of the things that I see quite often is ink at the end of a company name, and people will just do a search and please on the word ink, and it'll come out the middle of all the words with ink in it, which means you have half your supply database with the word ink missing from the middle of its name. So you have to be really careful about what you choose to put into these tools and automation. But we know what works and what doesn't. So.
Yeah. And in terms of the difference that sort of work makes, right? Yeah. Because there's two scenarios here. There's right at the beginning of the project where you understand you've laid the groundwork and done all the right things, and Scott will be nodding his head here in the background saying you put all the work in place to start with. And that's one place to start from, right? Where you've got buy-in from executives and it's come all the way down to say, right, let's clean our data. But you must get brought into situations where the data is hellish, for want of another word, and it hasn't necessarily been maintained well throughout the years.
That's like all the projects?
That's all projects.
One person tells
you should stop, you need to get on. But I think it's what are the differences in approach here? Because obviously, are you sometimes brought in emergency situations like this data quality is just so bad you need to get it done within X amount of time? We need to fix this so that the next Y can happen in the chain. How do you miss that?
I think maybe out of all the projects and clients I've worked with over the 5 years, maybe 2 or 3 have been proactive. The rest are all reactive, like it's hit the fan, we are in trouble, can you help us? And the biggest problem I get is trying to persuade people to invest in their data quality. It's not a cost, it's an investment. Be proactive, fix those problems before they happen, and you'll save money. But that investing in data quality, I mean, it is seen as a menial job, but when you do it day in, day out, and I have done it for 10 years now, I can do it faster, better, more accurately than anyone in their team, and I don't care who they are. You know, they've got a million other jobs they need to do. The data quality thing is going to go to the bottom of the list. For us, that's the priority. It gets done all day, every day. It's the first thing we do. So,
with almost immediately quantifiable results, I think.
I think so, and it could be cost savings. I worked with a government department last year and helped them rationalise some of their spreadsheets and improve their process. They saved 6 hours of manual input time and 4 hours of query resolving in a week between 2 people. So 10 hours in 1 week just by.
And what was the percentage you said there was reactionary versus people planning and thinking it's a good idea to invest in?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say 90%, I would say.
90%
Yeah.
reactive. I mean, I guess some people don't know that they have the problem until they actually try and work with that data.
So they find it, I can find the problems for them. They don't always like that either. But I mean, I can tell you that, you know, there are certain companies that I talk to and it can be years before anything happens. You know, it's that low down on the priority list.
But how, so I'm going to take some examples from some recent works that I've done. For example, an organisation with that sells a single range of products, but these products have completely different names on different systems. So they have a CRM system where they do the selling, and the difficulty there is then mapping. So when they get through to actually invoicing for these products, they have an invoicing process. Then we try and analyse, okay, who sold this?
And which one?
And which one?
You know, I'm just about to start a project that's very similar to that for retail marketing, so category management. They sell a lot of products in retail stores, so they get data from Tesco Boots, Kantar, IRI, Nielsen, and each company will name it slightly differently and categorise it slightly differently. So they have no visibility across the market on how much they're selling of one single product. So we're about to take all that data, merge it together, standardise it, and then give them a taxonomy with a single categorisation. And then we can map it back to whichever retailer has their own taxonomy so that they can manage it going forward in the future. And I mean, that's going to be huge for them because they could find gaps in the market, they could find out what's actually doing better than they thought or not as well. You could find trends that they didn't know about, and there's so many opportunities.
And this particular company wanted to understand the profitability margins. And that was really difficult because you have one team selling through a CRM and it calls it for something different to the billing system, to the ERP on the other end.
And it's not always possible to change the original input system, so you have to find a way to work around it and make it work for you. I mean, just because you can't change the original system doesn't mean you can't do something.
Well, that's a good point. We're just going to launch into our comments here because we've got a few things that are happening. So first of all, ClickDoc, obviously, you know, Doc's been mentioned a few times. Michael has picked up on this, another Michael's attended our shows quite a few times. But I saw an interesting one here from Stefan that I want to bring up. So he wants to know a bit more about what process steps you go through. What does a typical data cleaning process look like? And like standardising the data, how considering all stakeholders and opinions on which is standardisation. Now I know that's a lot.
They don't get opinions.
They don't get opinions. The job just gets done. But how standardised is your process then? How bespoke do you have to make it from a company?
It's tailored for each project, but actually there are standard things that we do. So the first thing that I would ask any client would be, what do you want your end goal to be? And I don't mean just like fix this data, but what are you going to use the data for? How are you going to use it? What do you need? Like, we can categorise it, but do you need us to tidy up like the towns and cities and counties as well? You know, do you need to know region information? Do you need your product descriptions tidied up, or are you quite happy just to look at the categorisation? So things like that we'll ask. And then the first process will normally be the data prep, the data modeling stage. So it might be one file or it might be multiple files, merge them together, reformat everything, particularly stuff in the US, you have to be careful with dates and things because they get around. You know, learning from this year is we have a US client. Every time we open a file in the UK with the laptop with the UK settings, it tries to fix the US dates. And when we put it into Omniscope, it just goes crazy. Yeah. So my data analyst has now got his laptop set to US settings, so when we open the file, everything's fine.
So you got to open the file and be able to open the file enough to get it into the tool to do the pre-processing and then get it into
Yeah,
the
and it's
right
hard
format.
because if you open it, like normally you would look at the raw data to check that your data that you're working with is correct, but if you're opening it and it's not right, so we figured a way to go around that. And so that would be the first part, and then it would normally be split up between the team, and then we would go through the normalization stage first of all, so all the suppliers would be normalized, all the suffixes removed, you know, your limited, your inks, your .uk's or whatever, .sa, whatever it is. Then we can categorise the data. Now, if it's a new project, we'll categorise that manually from scratch. If it's an existing client, a company that we've already classified some data, we have master lists, so we can map over anything we've seen before and automatically classify it. And then if it's database stuff, we've got models that we'll run it through to remove formatting, etc., commas, put it into a standard kind of case size. You know, it's important to think about those kind of things as well.
Yeah.
Then it'll come back, it'll be checked, and then individually, all the individual files, they'll be merged back together, it'll be checked again as a whole for consistency, and then it'll go back to the client for review.
And then ultimately, does this go back into the source system, or is this provided as a sort of mapping table?
I think most
I know what your answer is going to be here. Before you answer the question, I'm just
Yeah.
interested to see now what your answer is, but I think I know what your
Oh,
answer
what do you
is
think
going
it's
to be.
going to be?
I think your answer is going to be that's what should happen, but it never does.
Actually, it could be. I don't honestly know. I just send it back as a CSV, and it's up to them what they want to do with it. But the reality is, I'm going to deal with procurement mainly. They can't put what they need in the finance system, so they have to look at it as an external
Right.
like database, basically.
I think there's a couple of things I want to raise here. The first thing is the importance when it gets to analytics and visualization of this foundational piece we're talking about. And just to cite an example, maps. Right? I want to talk about maps because geo-encoding and maps and not having the right postcode or name of a town or a country, and honestly, you have no idea, well you probably do, about the frustration as an analytics professional when you're building a front-end component that deals with geographies and only 29% of the geography is reverse geo-encoded, so you get massive parts of not so much countries, but when you're talking about cities and towns.
We did a project for a land-owned
and the
company
reverse
in the
geo-encoder
States.
just literally throws its hands up and goes,
Yeah, we literally had to get the latitude of the buildings using Google Maps and Google Images. That was the only way we could get the information. But I've done some podcasts with a company called Safe Software, and they are spatial data experts. And it's the same thing, like they are building replica digital twins of buildings, etc. You get the dimensions wrong, and that's it. You're in trouble when you get to the site, you know.
Yeah. So that was the first thing. The other thing I wanted to mention is, I think there's always going to be a demand for your services, right? Because in the land of data and analytics, as a wider space, there are a lot of fad things that happen, right? There are a lot of things that come in and out, and it's fashionable to do this, it's fashionable to be on-prem, and then it's fashionable to be in the cloud. But these are all optional. You can do these things if you want. If you really want to stick to the open, you can. But when you're talking about the crux and the fundamental issues with your data sets, that's something that you'll only be able to get so far along your company journey, and it's going to kill you. Like, and it really is, isn't it? And we're not overstating this. This is going to become a very serious issue for a company when it starts growing.
I think there's a huge myth in the industry that you buy this software off the shelf and it's going to fix all your problems. The reality is this software is built for a generic range of companies. You might have industry-specific needs that won't be met, or that the automation doesn't understand. And also, this will always be a job that nobody wants to do, or very few people. So it's a good space to be in. And honestly, I could not have imagined how much my business would have grown in the last couple of years. I honestly thought that with everybody looking at data more, they would start to understand it more, but they seem to understand it less. They find more problems.
Yeah.
And so it's keeping us very busy, so I can't complain.
Yeah, I think with more data comes more problems. I think another issue, it's very easy for people to say at the start, I'm going to put in all sorts of tools and sort of input filters to make sure that I'm capturing data properly. But inevitably, you're in charge of running your business, and so that then becomes a secondary issue. I think, I've seen some of your previous times you've been on the QDMS. You've been talking about some of the things that you could put in place to actually get data structured at source so that you don't have dirty data.
Yes.
The issue is that you can talk, I think, till you're blue in the face about that, but it's always going to be something that you think about. It's an afterthought. And the best, I've seen all sorts of AI tools, machine learning tools that claim to be able to fix your data. They're not quite there yet.
They're fixing the problem, not preventing the problem.
Exactly. I really think it takes an evangelist, somebody like yourself, to be out there getting the message across every single day.
So this is topical, right? So we've got this just, I can't believe you, maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't, but Nick's got a question up here as well. Have you had any success using AI tools or processes to automate data cleansing? So where do you sit on the fence here, Susan, right? Are you like the manual classification guru, and there's the AI classification guru that lives in another land somewhere else that tries to do it differently? Where do you sort of philosophically sit on this fence?
So, like as I said, I'm all about process improvement and efficiencies. Now, if there is an accurate and reliable way to use automation to clean data, then I'm absolutely all for that. And there are, I haven't used the tools, but I know there are a lot of good tools out there that can help with address cleaning, etc. We're starting to build some rules and things to help us do that internally. There's no point in getting someone to sit for days doing that if we can help with. But you still need somebody to look over it and who understands like the addresses and the context of the data. Trying to get AI to understand context can be very difficult.
Yeah. And I think that's the crux of what we're talking about, right? An AI and an automation tool does not know the context of your business. And it's very similar in the analytics universe to using something like Data Robot to predict what's going to happen with your data.
Yeah.
And that you can teach it everything mechanically about the data, and you can tell it, okay, the USA example, to look for the dots and the spaces, but you can't really teach it the meaning of,
There's an extra dot in the USA. It might not recognise that extra dot as saying that needs to be changed. It spins under the rules and things.
I haven't seen a product, but I do feel like a crowdsourced type of product might work here. Yeah. What I have seen is a trend to move into data catalogs. Mm-hmm. So that's a catalog that you put in front of your data. It then democratizes data across your business. So that's topical. Talk about data democratization. Democratizes data across your business, and some of them will give quality scores on the data that you have access to.
Yeah.
How that works, I don't really know.
It depends on the data, it really does, because in the spend data classification space, it won't know if it's right or not. You can't use a data point and say yes or no on it. It's very contextual. And again, people have asked, what's the best spend data classification tool? Well, there's loads of them out there, but if there was one that was actually really good, everybody would be using it. Mm-hmm. However, I often say, if you were to build one for your specific business, then that would be amazing, because it knows your business, it's only dealing with your business. All these other tools are having to deal with all the industries, all the different possibilities, and it's too broad.
Right. So please pardon my ignorance here, but when you're talking about classification, does that include not only fixing your USA and US, but also grouping that into a continent, for example, or it's a spend category, grouping that into
a lot of it
hierarchy.
Is brew would be under food and drink. Level 2 might be beverages, and then level 3 might be soft drinks or fizzy drinks. And then you could have a level 4 that's either brew, Coke, or carbonated, non-carbonated drinks. That can be used for, how much we're selling, how much we're buying. how much we're manufacturing, or you could separate the ingredients out, the sugar, the flavouring,
That kind of blows my mind a little bit, because then you could have a spelling correct, but it's in the wrong category.
Oh, we've got different countries, different spellings.
Yeah.
So let's rewind just a touch then, and you mentioned the word taxonomy quite close to the beginning there. So I think for everyone's clarity, not just mine, excuse me, taxonomy. First of all, what does that mean in terms of the context of what we're talking about? And second of all, how does that relate to the examples that we're talking about here as well?
Well, partly, I think it originated with the animals was the original taxonomy, but now in my world, it's a table with maybe 1 to 5 levels, and you would use this table of items to classify and categorize what a supplier does. So what has this company bought from Dell? What has this company bought from Booden? What has this company bought from Facebook? So they're common, Facebook, Dell, IBM, PwC, they are all common suppliers that you would see in spend data. PwC, for example, level 1 would be professional services, level 2 might be business or management consulting, or professional services, maybe then consultancy, then business or management consulting. There's so many different types of consulting, it's wild out there.
In terms of consulting, it's like when you get those, right, sorry, this is a bit of a rant, right? But see when you go into some of these websites and it asks you what category your business is, and they don't give you, well, first of all, they give you 2 good choices.
Company's house, that's the worst.
Sometimes they give you a free text box that only populates when you start to type it in, so you don't know what the list is, and you're just scrabbling around for like IT or consultancy or visualization or business intelligence or taxonomy, and you're sitting there the whole time, and it's just a communication breakdown issue, and it's just an issue of not having the right message.
How can they find you if you can't define what you do?
And if you can't define yourself, what chance does anyone else have? And I think that's a huge crux of what we're talking about here. If we can't define our own hierarchies and know them like that, then how can we expect anyone else externally to understand how we're structured?
So it depends on the context. So something like company's house, you have to choose something, but when it comes to drop-down lists, people will often are lazy. They will often just choose the first thing.
Okay, accountant.
Yes, that's why you end up with 20% more of something than you expect, because everyone's just picked the default. So do you deal with that side of things as well, not just the actual filtering of the data and actually aggregating up correctly in terms of the way that it's classified, but do you help to guide on that as well in terms of, well, this should be a default, or this should be the default, or what's not, or is that a step too far?
Some clients know what it should be and they will instruct or guide us. A lot of them won't. We'll maybe provide them with a lookup table or a master list that they can look at. I do training sometimes. I've got my quote methodology, which is make sure your data has quote on. Might be a season where we're taking hours off, but you need to keep your data going on.
Certainly in here today.
It's a bit toasty. So it's got to be consistent. So are we using the same terminology? I mean, I've heard of customer being defined in different ways within the same organisation, depending on which department you're talking about. Date formats, units of measurement, all those things get on the same page, because most companies are now looking at global data sets. So you need to have, if you have 2 different dates, or in the same date but in 2 different formats, and you're trying to match documents based on a date, they're not going to match. So it's going to be a problem. Then it needs to be organised, so like a wardrobe, have everything by style type, maybe by colour. You just pull it out and get what you need really easily. Data is very much the same, categorise it. Someone asks you, how much have we sold of this in this month? 2 years ago, you can go, there you go. You're not spending a week trying to cut and paste the data together, figure out what it is, all that kind of stuff. And it's got to be accurate as well. So define what that is. It depends on the data. You know, your finance numbers have to be 100% accurate, but it can be something else for a different department. And then we have all those things, you have trustworthy data. So you can go to like senior management with your analytics and your charts and your reporting and your graphs, and they can look at it, and you can be confident that those numbers are right, that they won't be able to pick holes in it. And sadly, sometimes I think the senior managers don't know how to interrogate the data either, so they don't even know if it's wrong.
I think what often happens is that people like us get slated first because we present something that we've clearly not analysed correctly. And it's like, no, this is the data, this is what you asked for, it's just not in the right shape.
Yeah, and well, something that actually is really important when building a taxonomy, I was telling you, there's like professional services, HR, IT. Make it analytics friendly for charts. Think about those things. How